Hello friends, welcome to English Minds. Welcome to John Milton Top 500 Essential Question Series Part 4. In this episode, we analyze Milton's profound themes, poetic style, and political vision. From Paradise Lost to Samson Agonist, discover the depth of his legacy. Stay engaged as we unlock the brilliance of this literary giant. In which year did John Milton publish El Allegro? Option A 1631. El Allegro is a pastoral poem by John Milton composed in 1631 and published in 1645. As part of his poems of Mr. John Milton, both English and Latin. English and Latin. The poem contrasts with Il Penseroso, portraying a joyful, active life filled with mirth and happiness. The title El Allegro is Italian for the cheerful one, the happy person. It is written in iambic pentameter, tetrameter, not pentameter, iambic tetrameter. Couplets. The pleasure of rural and city life. The poem includes classical allusions, Renaissance influences, and puritanical themes, reflecting Milton's early poetic style. Option A. Its correct answer. When was Lycidas published? Option B. 1637. Lycidas is an elegy written by Milton in 1637 and published in 1638. In a collection of elegies titled Justa Ediodo, King Neophorogo, Justaeduo, King Neufrago. It was written in memory of Edward King, Milton's friend and fellow student at Cambridge, not Oxford, who drowned in a shipwreck. This poem is composed in irregular rhyme and meter, reflecting a pastoral elegy tradition. It contains classical references, Christian allegory, and strong Puritan elements. It anticipates themes later explored in Paradise Lost, including divine justice and poetic inspiration. In which year did John Milton publish Paradise Lost? Option B 1667. Paradise Lost, Milton epic masterpiece, was published in 1667 in 10 books and later revised into 12 books in 1674. It is written in blank verse, unrhymed iambic pentameter, a style Milton refined. The poem recounts of the fall of man, depicting Satan's rebellion, Adam and Eve temptation, and their expulsion from Eden. Milton invoked the Holy Spirit Muse as his inspiration and, and rejecting classical invocation. The works reflects Puritan theology, political ceremony, commentary, and classical influences, making it a cornerstone of English literature. Next, when did John Milton publish Paradise Regained? 1671. Paradise Regained was published in 1671 along with Samson Agonists. It is a sequel to Paradise Lost, focusing on Christ's resistance and Satan's temptation in the wilderness, drawing from the Gospel of Luke. The poem is shorter than Paradise Lost, written in 4 books in blank verse. Unlike Paradise Lost, which is grand and epic, Paradise Regained emphasizes moral victory through faith and self-control. The poem aligns with Milton's Christian humanist philosophy and reflects his political and theological ideas. In which year did John Milton publish Samson Agonists? Option A 1671. Samson Agonist was published in 1671 alongside Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained. It is a tragic closet drama which can be read, not performed. Modeled after Greek tragedies inspired by Sophocles and Euripides. The play tells the story of Samson, a blind and fallen hero who ultimately redeems himself by destroying the Palestine, paralleling Milton's own blindness and Puritan struggle. It follows the unities of time, place, and action, maintaining a choral structure similar to Greek drama. The works reflects Milton's political disillusionment after the fall of the Puritan government, drawing parallels between Samson and Oliver Cromwell followers. When was Areopagitica published by John Milton? Option B 1644. Areopagitica was published on 23rd November 1644 as a pamphlet against censorship. It was written in response to the licensing order of 1643, which required government approval for publications. The title refers to Areopagus, the high court of ancient Athens, symbolizing free speech and intellectual liberty. Milton argues that truth emerges from open debate and the censorship weakens intellectual progress. The pamphlet was not successful initially but later became a foundational text advocating freedom of expression. In which year did Milton publish The Tenure of Kings and Magistrates? Option A. The Tenure of Kings and Magistrates was published in February 1649, just weeks after King Charles' first executions. Milton defended the right of the people to depose or execute a tyrannical king. He justified the actions of Oliver Cromwell and the Puritan government, arguing against the idea of divine monarchy. The work contributed to Republican political thought opposing absolute monarchy. It later led to Milton's appointment as Secretary of Foreign Tongues under the Commonwealth regime. When did John Milton become totally blind? Option A, 1652. Milton gradually lost his eyesight due to what is believed to be glaucoma or retinal detachment. By 1652, he was completely blind, relying on assistant to transcribe his writing. Despite blindness, he composed Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, and Samson Agonist through oral dictation. His famous sonnet on his blindness reflect his struggle and acceptance of divine will. Milton saw his blindness and God test align with लेता है aligning with his Puritan belief. Next, in which year was Defensio Popolo published? Option A, 1651. Defensio Popolo first defense was published in 1651 as a Latin prose work defending the English Commonwealth. It was written in response to Clerus Anonymous, Clerus Anonymous, Defensio Regia, 1649, which condemned the execution of Charles I. Milton argued that kings are accountable to their people, not divinely ordained rulers. The book gained international attention and solidified Milton's reputation as a leading political thinker. However, the controversy surrounding this work worsened his health and eyesight. In which year did John Milton marry his third wife, Elizabeth Minshull? We will well known option A, 1663. John Milton married Elizabeth Minshull on 24th February 24th Feb 1663 when he was 54 years old. She was 31 years younger than Milton and outlived him by more than 50 years. Milton's previous marriages, first wife Mary Powell, married in 1642 and she died 1650. She died 1652, means 10 years. And then with whom he had 4 children. Second wife Catherine Woodcock, married 1656 and she died 1658, who died shortly after childbirth, which means near about 2 years. And last, Elizabeth Minshull took care of him in this last year of blindness and was considered a devoted and patient wife. Their marriage occurred during the Restoration period when Milton faced political difficulties due to his Republican affiliations. When did John Milton publish Torquedon? Option B 1644 as a defense of divorce. Defense of divorce. It was a part of his divorce tract advocating for the right to dissolve unhappy marriages. The work faced severe criticism from Puritans and Royalists alike. Milton's personal experiences, including his troubled marriage with Mary Powell, influenced his views on divorce. When did Milton publish History of Britain? Option A 1670. The History of Britain was published in 1670, covering British history from legendary times to the Norman Conquest. The Norman Conquest. 1066. It was written during the 1650 but remained unpublished for years. Milton criticized monarchy, presenting a republican perspective on British rulers. The work was unfinished, reflecting his political disillusionment. After the Restoration, he relied on sources like Geoffrey of Monmouth and Bede to construct his narrative. मिल्टन ने इसमें राजशाही की आलोचना की और ब्रिटेन के शासकों पर गणतांत्रिक दृष्टिकोण प्रस्तुत किया। यह कार्य अधूरा रह गया क्योंकि पुनर्स्थापना रिस्टोरेशन के बाद उनका राजनीतिक मोह भंग हो गया था। उन्होंने जॉफरी ऑफ मनमथ और बीड जैसे ऐतिहासिक स्रोतों का उपयोग किया। इस सोर्स का In which year did Milton publish Artist Plenary Institute Art of Logic? Was published in 1672. इसमें रैमिज्म पर आधारित थी जो अरस्तु की पारंपरिक तर्कशास्त्र प्रणाली का एक सरल रूप था। यह पुस्तक लैटिन में लिखी गई और मिल्टन की शिक्षण विधियों को दर्शाती है। मिल्टन का दृष्टिकोण युक्तिपूर्ण तर्क, विश्लेषण और स्पष्टता पर केंद्रित था, जो पारंपरिक स्कोलास्टिक तर्क शास्त्र से भिन्न था। यह छात्रों के लिए एक पाठ्य पुस्तक के रूप में लिखी गई थी, जो उनकी शिक्षा प्रणाली और बौद्धिक स्वतंत्रता में विश्वास प्रकट करती थी। When was published by Milton? Option D 1670. It included 7 Latin orations, showcasing his rhetorical skill. These speeches covered topics like education, poetry, and philosophy. Milton emphasized humanist learning and rejected medieval scholastic methods. The collection reflects his early intellectual growth and classical influences. When did Milton publish Of Reformation? Option D 1664. Option A 1641. In of Reformation touching church discipline and England was published in 1641. It was Puritan pamphlet arguing for the reform of church and England. Milton opposed bishops and ecclesiastical hierarchy, supporting a Presbyterian model. The work was part of a series of tracts criticizing Archbishop William Laud and the monarchy control over religion. It reflects Milton's early political engagement before he became involved in republicanism. When did John Milton publish to Practical Episcopacy? Option A 1641. It is a part of Milton's early political writings. It was written in the response of episcopal governments criticizing the hierarchical structure of the Church of England. Milton argued against bishops and prelates, supporting a Presbyterian system instead. The work aligned with Puritan belief and opposed to policies of Archbishop William Laud. This pamphlet was the first in a series of tracts and defended religious freedom and reform. यह मिल्टन की प्रारंभिक राजनीतिक रचनाओं में से एक थी। इसमें एपिस्कोपल शासन प्रणाली, बिशप प्रणाली की आलोचना की गई थी और अंग्रेजी चर्च के पदानुक्रम का विरोध करती किया गया था। मिल्टन ने बिशपों और धर्म गुरुओं के विरुद्ध तर्क दिए और इसके स्थान पर प्रेस्बिटेरियन प्रणाली का समर्थन किया। यह प्यूरिटनों के विचारों से मेल खाती थी और आर्कबिशप विलियम लॉर्ड की नीतियों की आलोचना करती थी। यह पर्चा धार्मिक स्वतंत्रता के सुधार का समर्थन करने वाली एक श्रृंखला की पहली रचना थी। In which year did Milton published animated version? Option C 1643. This is upon the remonstrant defense against was published in 1643. It was a polemical work responding to Bishop Joseph Hall, a defender of episcopacy. Milton attacked on the Anglican church structure of called for reformation. The work was written in support of a group of Puritan clergy. It was highly satirical and marked Milton's growing involvement in religious controversies. यह एक विवादास्पद लेख था जिसमें मिल्टन ने एपिस्कोपल शासन के समर्थक बिशप जोसेफ हॉल का खंडन किया। इसमें मिल्टन ने अंग्रेजी चर्च की संरचना की आलोचना की और सुधार की मांग की। यह धर्मगुरुओं के समूह में समर्थन में लिखा गया था। यह लेख व्यंग्यपूर्ण भाषा में लिखा गया और यह दर्शाता है कि मिल्टन धार्मिक बहसों की गहराई में शामिल हो रहे थे। When did John Milton publish Doctrine and Discipline of Divorce? Option A 1643. The Doctrine and Discipline of Divorce was first published in 1642-43 and later expanded in 1644. It was the earliest defense of divorce based on personal and biblical arguments. Milton troubled marriage with Mary Powell influenced their works. He argued that marriage should be based on mutual compatibility, not just legal or religious consent. The book faced strong criticism from the church and society. द डॉक्ट्रिन एंड डिसिप्लिन ऑफ डिवोर्स ये पहली बार 1643 में प्रकाशित हुई थी और बाद में 1644 में इसे विस्तारित किया गया विस्तारित संस्करण आया। यह तलाक के समर्थन में लिखे गए सबसे प्रारंभिक ग्रंथों में से एक था जिसमें व्यक्तिगत और बाइबल पर आधारित तर्क दिए गए थे। मिल्टन के असफल विवाह मैरी पॉवेल से ने इस पुस्तक को लिखने में महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका निभाई। उसने तर्क दिया कि विवाह का आधार केवल कानूनी या धार्मिक नहीं बल्कि आपसी संगति कॉम्पेटिबिलिटी होनी चाहिए। यह पुस्तक चर्च और समाज द्वारा कड़ी आलोचना का सामना कर रही थी। When was judgment of Martin Bucer concerning divorce published? Option A 1644. The judgment of Martin Bucer concerning divorce was published in 1644. Milton referred to Martin, a 16th century Protestant reformer, to support his views on divorce. The book was theological justification of his earlier with doctrine and discipline of divorce. Milton argued that Bucer's interpretations of marriage supported his own ideas on marital freedom. The work aimed to gain more religious and intellectual approval for the cause of divorce reform. The judgment of Martin Bucer कंसर्निंग डिवोर्स 1644 में प्रकाशित हुई। इसमें 16 सेंचुरी के प्रोटेस्टेंट सुधारक मार्टिन बुसर के विचारों को उद्धृत किया गया है ताकि तलाक के पक्ष में तर्क दिए जा सके। यह पुस्तक मिल्टन की पूर्व रचना डॉक्ट्रिन एंड डिसिप्लिन ऑफ डिवोर्स का धार्मिक समर्थन प्रदान करने के लिए लिखी गई थी। मिल्टन ने बताया कि बुसर के विवाह संबंधी विचार उनके वैवाहिक स्वतंत्रता और सिद्धांतों से मेल खाते थे। इस ग्रंथ का उद्देश्य तलाक सुधार के लिए धार्मिक और बौद्धिक समर्थन प्राप्त करना था। In which year did Milton publish Apology of Magnus? Option D 1644. This work justified Milton's harsh rhetoric against his opponents. It provided a philosophical and theological defense of Puritan reforms. The pamphlet was also a personal response to attack on his writing style characters. When did John Milton publish The Reason of Church Government Urge Against Prelacy? Option C 1644. The Reason of Church Government Urged Against Prelacy was published in 1644 as part of Milton's attack on Church of England hierarchical structure. It was written in response to ongoing Puritan movement against episcopal rule. Milton argued that church should be governed by presbyters, not bishops. He defended religious liberty and criticized the interference of bishops in politics. This work also provides insight into Milton's poetic ambition as he expresses his devout desire to write a great epic which later became Paradise Lost. यह प्यूरिटन आंदोलन के दौरान लिखा गया था जो एपिस्कोपल शासन का विरोध कर रहा था। मिल्टन ने तर्क दिया कि चर्च में बिशपों के स्थान पर प्रेस्बिटरों द्वारा शासन किया जाना चाहिए। उन्होंने धार्मिक स्वतंत्रता का समर्थन किया और राजनीतिक में बिशपों के हस्तक्षेप की आलोचना की। इस कृति में मिल्टन ने अपने महाकाव्य लेखन की महत्वाकांक्षा का भी उल्लेख किया, जिसके बाद उन्होंने पैराडाइज लॉस्ट के रूप में पूरा किया। In which year did Milton published Areopagitica? Option B, 1644. Areopagitica was published in 1644 as a powerful defense of free speech and press freedom. It was a pamphlet addressed to the English Parliament criticizing the licensing order on 1643, which required government approval before publishing books. The title refers to Areopagus, the High Court of ancient Athens. Milton argued that censorship hinders the pursuit of truth and that ideas should be allowed to compete freely. This work remains one of most important defense of freedom on expression in history. Next, when did John Milton publish The Ready and Easy Way to Establish a Free Commonwealth? Option A, 1660. The Ready and Easy Way to Establish a Free Commonwealth was published in 1660 during the political turmoil surrounding the restoration of Charles II. Milton was a strong supporter of the Republican government and opposed the return of monarchy. It is work he warned against the dangers of restoring a king, arguing that a republic was the best form of government. The book was widely ignored as public sentiment favored the monarchy's return. After the restoration, Milton was briefly imprisoned for his republican views but was later pardoned. The Ready of and Easy Way to Establish a Free Commonwealth 1660 में प्रकाशित हुई थी, जब इंग्लैंड में चार्ल्स द्वितीय की पुनर्स्थापना को लेकर राजनीतिक उथल-पुथल चल रही थी। मिल्टन गणराज्यवादी सरकार के प्रबल समर्थक थे और राजशाही की वापसी के विरोधी थे। इस पुस्तक में उन्होंने तर्क दिया कि राजशाही को पुनर्स्थापित करना होगा और गणराज्य सबसे अच्छा शासन रूप है। हालांकि यह पुस्तक सार्वजनिक रूप से अधिक प्रभावशाली नहीं रही क्योंकि राजशाही की वापसी का समर्थन कर रहे थे लोग। पुनर्स्थापना के बाद मिल्टन को कुछ समय के लिए जेल में डाल दिया गया था, लेकिन बाद में उन्हें माफी दे दी गई। In which year did John Milton publish Brief Notes upon a Late Sermon? Option B, 1661. Brief Notes upon a Late Sermon was published in 1661. Matthew Griffith, who had supported to monarchy. Milton criticized Griffith's defense of kingship, arguing that the Republican cause was not yet lost. The book attempted to revive the spirit of Puritanism and Republicanism. However, with Charles II firmly in power, Milton's arguments had little impact. ब्रीफ नोट्स अपॉन अ लेट सरमन 1661 में प्रकाशित हुई थी, जब चार्ल्स द्वितीय की पुनर्स्थापना हो चुकी थी। यह बिशप मैथ्यू ग्रिफिथ के उपदेश के जवाब में लिखी गई थी, जिन्होंने राजशाही का समर्थन किया था। मिल्टन ने राजशाही के समर्थन की आलोचना करते हुए तर्क दिया कि गणराज्य अभी पूरी तरह से समाप्त नहीं हुआ है। यह पुस्तक का उद्देश्य प्यूरिटनवाद और गणराज्यवाद के पुनर्भावना को पुनर्जीवित करना था, लेकिन चार्ल्स द्वितीय के सत्ता में आने के कारण इस पुस्तक का विशेष प्रभाव नहीं पड़ा। When did John Milton publish Epistolae Familiaris? Option C, 1672. एपिस्टोले फैमिलीज 1672 में प्रकाशित की गई थी, जब मिल्टन अपने जीवन के अंतिम चरण में थे। यह उनकी लैटिन भाषा में लिखी गई पत्रों का एक संग्रह है। लैटिन लैंग्वेज जिसमें बौद्धिक और राजनीतिक विचारों को दर्शाया गया है। This work demonstrates Milton's fluency in Latin and his engagement in international debates. In which year did John Milton publish poems and upon several occasions? Option C, option A 1673. It is a collection of his English and Latin poems, including earlier and later work. It contains sonnet, elegies, and epigram, as well as translation from Latin and Greek. The collection, this collection also includes poems written during his youth. When did John Milton publish the likeliest means to remove hirelings from the church? Option A 1659. It is a pamphlet Milton criticized the practice of paying clergy with government funds. He argued for church reform and advocated voluntary contributions instead of state-funded salaries for ministers. This work reflects his Puritan ideals and opposition to corruption and the church. When did John Milton die? Option B 1674, 8 November, at the age of 65. He suffered from gout and other health issues in his latter years. He was buried at St. Giles Cripplegate Church in London. His legacy as a poet, political thinker, and defender of free speech remains influential. When was the first edition of Paradise Lost published? Option B 1667. Paradise Lost was first published in 1667 in 10 books. It was later revised and republished in 1674 in 12 books. The poem narrates the biblical story of the fall of man, focusing on Satan, rebellion, Adam and Eve disobedience, and their expulsion from Eden. It is considered of the greatest epic poems in English literature. In which year did John Milton marry his first wife, Mary Powell? Option A 1642. Option B 1643. De Doctrina Christina is a theological treatise written by the English poet and thinker John Milton. It is a systematic exposition of Milton's religious views. It is published in 1825. The Latin manuscript was found in 1823 and published in found in 1823 and published in 1825 by Cambridge University. This book includes facsimiles and specimens from Milton's manuscripts, bibliography, references, and associated names. The book is a translation of a treatise on Christian doctrine compiled from the Holy Scriptures. The book reflects Milton's close engagement with Scriptures. The book draws numerous proof texts and other to butters his concept of the Godhead and the moral theology. It's literally mean the teaching of Christianity. This book is available in several languages, including which sonnet by Milton is about his blindness. Option A, on his blindness. John Milton's sonnets 19. When I consider how my life is spent is about his blindness. It is also known as on his blindness. The poem reflects on the challenges of being blind, both physical and spiritual. The speaker worries that he can't fulfill the task God has set for him. He also worries that he wasting time, wasting his abilities to serve God. In the second half of the poem, the speaker reassures himself that God doesn't need human help. They also serve who only stand and wait. God doth no need either man work or his own gift. Who best bear is my yoke, they serve him best. The poem was likely written in mid 16th century after Milton had lost his sight. Milton was completely blind at the age of 42. The poem is one of the most Milton's best known sonnets. The last three lines are particularly well known. When I consider how my light is spent. Which poem by Milton is titled On the Late Massacre in Piedmont? Option D. On the Late Massacre in Piedmont 1655 में लिखी गई एक सोनेट है। यह इटली के पीडमोंट क्षेत्र में वॉलेंडेंसियन प्रोटेस्टों के नरसंहार के विरोध में लिखी गई थी। मिल्टन ने इससे ईश्वरीय न्याय की प्रार्थना की और धार्मिक उत्पीड़न की आलोचना की। यह कविता प्रसिद्ध पंक्ति से शुरू होती एवेंज ओ लॉर्ड दिस slaughtered saint whose bones when was El Allegro published? Option A 1645. El Allegro was first published in 1645 in a poetry collection along with Il Penseroso. El Allegro celebrates joy, merriment, and an active life, whereas Il Penseroso praises contemplation and melancholy. It is written in lyrical verse and contrasts two different approaches of life. El Allegro 1645 में प्रकाशित हुई और इसे इल पेंसरेशो के साथ एक काव्य संग्रह में शामिल किया गया था। एल एलिग्रो खुशी, आनंद और सक्रिय जीवन का उत्सव मनाती है, जबकि इल पेंसरेशो गंभीरता और विचारशीलता की प्रशंसा करती है। यह लयबद्ध छंदों में लिखी गई है और जीवन के दो विभिन्न दृष्टिकोणों को प्रस्तुत करती है। What is the title of companion piece to El Allegro? While El Allegro, option A, Il Penseroso, while El Allegro praises cheerfulness and mirth, Ill Pen's Ratio glorifies melancholy and contemplation. Both poems were published together in 1645. इल पेंस रेशो एल एलिग्रो की कंपेनियन पोयम मीन्स सहगामी कविता है। एल एलिग्रो आनंद और उत्सव का गुणगान करती है, जबकि इल पेंस रेशो कविता गंभीरता और चिंतन की प्रशंसा करती है। दोनों कविताएं 1645 में एक साथ प्रकाशित हुई थी। What is commerce? A mask? Commerce is a mask, a form of theatrical entertainment popular in the 17th century. It was first performed in 1634 at Ludlow Castle. The mask promotes virtue over temptation, featuring a lady who resists the seduction of Commerce, the enchanter. कॉमर्स एक मास्क है जो 17वीं सदी के लोकप्रिय नाट्य प्रदर्शन का एक रूप था। इसका प्रथम प्रदर्शन 1634 में लुडलो कैसल में हुआ था। यह नैतिकता और पवित्रता को बढ़ावा देता है, जिसमें एक महिला जादूगर कॉमर्स के प्रलोभन का विरोध करती है। When was commerce a mask presented at Ludlow Castle first presented? Option B 1634. Commerce was performed on 29th September in 1634 to celebrate his appointment as Lord President of Wales. The play highlights the power of virtue against vice. कॉमर्स का प्रथम प्रदर्शन 29 सितंबर 1634 को लुडलो कैसल में हुआ। इसे जॉन एगर्टन अर्ल ऑफ ब्रिजवाटर के लिए लिखा गया था जब वे वेल्स के लॉर्ड प्रेसिडेंट बने थे। यह नाटक नैतिकता और बुराई पर विजय को दर्शाता है। In which year was Lycidas written? Option B 1637. Lycidas was written in 1637 as a pastoral elegy. It was published in 1638. It is in a collection of Cambridge University poems. It mourns the death of Edward King, a friend of Milton who drowned in the Irish Sea. Who is Lycidas dedicated to? Option B Edward King. Lycidas is dedicated to Edward King, a Cambridge University scholar and Milton's friend. King drowned in 1637 while sailing to Ireland. Milton uses the poem of mourns and death and critique corrupt clergy. What event inspired the poem Lycidas? Option B A friend death at sea. Lycidas was written in 1637 as a pastoral elegy. It was inspired by the death of Edward King, a fellow student at Cambridge University who drowned in the Irish Sea. The poem expresses grief and moral reflection of human life and fate. What year was Defensio Secunda published? Option A 1654. Second Defense of the People of England was published in 1654. It was a political pamphlet defending Oliver Cromwell Commonwealth against यूरोपियन क्रिटिक्स। यह ओलिवर क्रॉमवेल के गणराज्य का समर्थन करने के लिए लिखी गई थी। इंग्लैंड के लोगों की दूसरी रक्षा। What political entity is defended in Defensio Secunda? Option B, the parliamentary regime. Milton defended the parliamentary commonwealth against monarchy and foreign critics. He supported Oliver Cromwell's rules and opposed the return of monarchy. In what year did Milton begin writing Paradise Lost? Option A, 1658. Milton began writing Paradise Lost in 1658 after losing his eyesight. He dedicated the poem to his assistants over the next several years. The poem took nearly 10 years to complete it. When was Paradise Lost completed? Option B, 1665. Option B, 1665. Milton began Paradise Lost in 1658 prior to his imprisonment and completed it in 1665. It is an epic poem in blank verse. The first version, published in 1667, consists of 10 books and over 10,000 lines of verses. A second edition followed in 1674, arranged into 12 books with minor revisions throughout. How many books? How many books are there in Paradise Lost? 12. Paradise Lost by John Milton and divided into 12 books. The poem was originally published in 1667 with 10 books, but a revised edition was 1674 in 12 books. Paradise Lost is an epic poem in blank verse and tells the biblical story of Adam and Eve's fall from grace. The poem is considered one of the greatest poems in the language. The book of Paradise Lost in very length, but book 9 being a longest. Book number 9 longest and book 7 shortest. The poem is structured in the way that inspired by Aeneid and Virgil. The poem begins in media res, meaning it starts in middle of the story. Milton composed Paradise Lost between 1658 to 1664. The poem structure, use of the epic question and invocation of muse are all classified. Inspired, the poem's subject matter is distinctly Christian. What is the notable feature of Paradise Lost in second edition? Option B, it consisted of 12 books. The most notable feature of the second edition of Paradise Lost it is that it significantly expanded in the poem by dividing book 7 and 10 in two parts. Book 7 and 10 in two parts. Split it, increasing the total number of books 10 to 12, giving a poem a more structure and complete epic quality. This change likely stemmed from Milton's desire to refine his work and provide more detailed narrative section within those lengthy books. The main change in the splitting of book 7 and 10 into two parts each, creating a 12 books structure. The second edition is 1674, several years of first edition. Some scholars speculate that Milton might have wanted to further elaborate on certain narrative elements with the previously long book 7 and 10. The poem concerns the biblical story of the fall of man, the temptation of Adam and Eve by the fallen angel Satan, and their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Next, the Restoration period in England starts. The Restoration period in England starts from option C, 1600. The Restoration period in England began with the restatement of Charles II and spanned 28 years of 17th century, 1666 to 1688. Following the period of Oliver Cromwell's who described the Elizabethan period as a noble and nation rousing herself like a strong man after sleep and shaking her invisible locks. Option B. John Milton. This quote is from John Milton's Areopagitica 1644, a pamphlet advocating freedom of speech and press. He praises England's intellectual and literary strength during the Elizabethan era. Milton became blind at the age of option A 1652 at the age of 44 years. Milton became completely blind in 1652 at the age of 44 due to glaucoma or retinal detachment. Despite his blindness, he dictated Paradise Lost and other works. Who said sonnet in Milton? Hand become a trumpet. Option A. William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth admired Milton's sonnet and remarked that in his hands they became a powerful tool for expressing grand ideas. Milton's sonnet, unlike traditional love sonnet, were often political and philosophical. विलियम वर्ड्सवर्थ मिल्टन के सोनेट की प्रशंसा करते हुए कहा कि ये एक बिगुल की तरह गूंजते हैं एज अ ट्रम्पेट. यानी ये शक्तिशाली संदेश देते हैं। मिल्टन ने सोनेट्स प्रेम कविता न होकर राजनीतिक और दार्शनिक विषयों पर आधारित थे। Who began his sonnet London 1802 with Milton, thou shouldst be living at this hour. In his sonnet Wordsworth In his sonnet London 1802, Wordsworth calls upon Milton, lamenting the moral decline of England and wishing for Milton's guidance. The line Milton, thou shouldst be living at this hour expresses his deep admiration for Milton's virtue and leadership. वर्ड्सवर्थ अपनी कविता में लंदन 1802 में संबोधित करते हुए कहा है कि मिल्टन, दाउ शुडस्ट बी लिविंग एट दिस और मिल्टन उन्होंने इंग्लैंड के नैतिक पतन की शिकायत की और मिल्टन के आदर्शों की वापसी की इच्छा की। Paradise Lost consists of 12 books. The first edition 1667 of Paradise Lost contained 10 books. The second edition 1674 revised structure into 12 books, following Virgil Aeneid, whom Judge Milton accused the Paradise Lost as the sons of Belial, flown with insolence with wine. Option D, all of the above: the Anglican clergy, the court writers, the opponents of Commonwealth. पैराडाइज लॉस्ट में बेलियल का उल्लेख नैतिक पतन और विलासिता के प्रतीक के रूप में किया गया है। मिल्टन ने इन्हें एंग्लिकन चर्च के पादरियों, दरबारी उल्लेखों और कॉमनवेल्थ के विरोधियों की आलोचना की है। डी डॉक्ट्रिना क्रिस्टीना कास्ट्स doubt on the orthodoxy of option A, Paradise Lost. De Doctrina Christina was a theological treatise by Milton, divorced in the 19th century. It presented on unorthodox religious views, leading scholars to question whether Paradise Lost truly aligned with traditional Christian doctrine. Who praised Milton in his sonnet London 1802 with these words: Thy soul was like a star and dwelt upon, thou hadst a voice whose sound was like the sea. Option A, Wordsworth. In London 1802, Wordsworth praises Milton's moral and poetic greatness. The line thy soul was like a star and dwelt apart compared Milton's virtue to a shining star, highlighting his solitude and righteousness. Next, in which poem did Wordsworth eulogize Milton with the lines, Milton, thou shouldst be living at this hour. England hath need of thee. She is a fin of stagnant waters. Option D, London 1802. Wordsworth in London 1802 laments England's moral decay and calls upon Milton's spirit for guidance. He compares England to a fin of stagnant water, means symbolizing corruption and in stagnation. Corruption. And लंदन 1802 में वर्ड्सवर्थ ने इंग्लैंड की नैतिक पतन की शिकायत की और मिल्टन को मार्गदर्शक के रूप में पुकारा। फेन ऑफ स्टैंडेंट वाटर का अर्थ है राजनीतिक और भ्रष्टाचार से। द ओड ऑन The morning of Christ's nativity of Milton had three kinds of poets: MCP, metaphysical, cavalier, and Puritan, who calls Milton the God-gifted organ voice of England. Option B. Tennyson. Alfred Lord Tennyson, one of England's greatest poets, referred to Milton as the God-gifted organ voice of England. These phrases emphasized Milton's majestic of power, of powerful poetic style, which resembled the grandeur of an organ's music. Paradise Lost was begun on option C, option A, Christmas Day, 1629. Milton began composing Paradise Lost on Christmas Day, 1629. Though he completed is much later. The theme of fall and redemption aligns with Christian symbolism and Christmas of Christmas. Who did Milton? Whom did Milton consider his master? Option A. Edmund Spenser. John Milton greatly admired Edmund Spenser and considered him his literary master. Milton's rich imagery, allegorical themes, and grand poetic style were influenced by Spenser the Fairy Queen. Who said Milton was poetical son of Spenser? Option A. John Dryden. John Dryden referred to Milton as a poetical son of Spenser, highlighting how Milton inherited Spenser's poetic tradition. The following lines are taken from How Soon Hath Time, the subtle thief of youth, stolen off on his wing my 3 and 20th year. Option A. On his being arrived to the age of 23. This sonnet reflects Milton's thoughts on youth, time, and poetic destiny, written when he was 23 years old. In which sonnet of Milton does the following line occur? They also serve who only stand and wait on his blindness. This line appears in Milton's famous sonnet about his blindness, expressing his resignation to God's will and his belief that patience and faith are also from forms of service. The following lines are taken from Fame is the spur that the clear spirit doth raise to scorn delight and life laborious day. Option B. Lycidas. These lines appear in Milton's elegy Lycidas, written in memory of Edward King, discussing the sacrifice required for true greatness. The titles of El Allegro and Il Pensereso are taken from option B. Philosophy. El Allegro, the cheerful man, and Il Pensereso of thoughtful man, reflects two contrasting philosophical temperaments, joyful and meditative. Who said about Milton, this man cuts all out and the ancient too? Option A, John Dryden. जॉन ड्राइडन ने मिल्टन की काव्य प्रतिभा की प्रशंसा करते हुए कहा कि उन्होंने सभी कवियों को पीछे छोड़ दिया, प्राचीन कवियों को भी। जॉन ड्राइडन प्रेजेंट मिल्टन पोइटिक जीनियस starting that he surpassed all poets, including the ancient. Which poem of John Milton are full of Elizabethan spirit, joys, and in nature? Option A, Horse and poems. मिल्टन की प्रारंभिक कविताएं हार्टन कविताएं जो बकिंघम शायर में लिखी गई थी, एलिजाबेथ एज की प्रसन्नता पूर्वक कार्य परंपरा को दर्शाती हैं, जैसे एल एलिग्रो, इल पेंसरेशो, कॉमर्स एंड लिसिडस. Milton's early Horton poems, written at Horton, Buckinghamshire, reflect the joyful Elizabethan poetic traditions such as Allegro, Il Penseroso, Comus, and Lycidas. Which one of these described Milton's Paradise Lost as the dream of Puritan fallen asleep over his Bible? Option A, Lamartine. French poet Lamartine described Paradise Lost as a Puritan biblical dream emphasizing its religious and visionary themes. फ्रांसीसी कवि लैमर्टीन ने पैराडाइज लॉस्ट को एक प्यूरिटन का सपना जो अपनी बाइबल पर सो गया है कहा, जिससे इसकी धार्मिकता और दिव्य विषय वस्तु पर बल दिया गया है. एरियोपजिटिका इज ऑल अबाउट फ्रीडम ऑफ प्रेस. Areopagitica 1644 is Milton's pamphlet advocating freedom of speech and press against government censorship. It was written against the licensing order of 1643, which imposed restriction on printed materials. In his sonnet, "Methought I saw my late spouse saint," Milton celebrates his second wife. The sonnet, also known as the Sonnet 23, was written in memory of Milton's second wife, Catherine Woodcock, who died in 1658, and he married in 1656. The poem expresses his grief and the feeling vision of her in his dreams. In which poem did Milton give his views on poetry? Option A, Lycidas. Lycidas 1637 is a pastoral elegy where Milton comments on the role and responsibility of poet. He criticized the corrupt clergy and emphasized poetic duty. The meaning of El Allegro is option B, happy and cheerful man. El Allegro is an Italian phrase meaning the cheerful man. It contrasts with Il Penseroso, which represents a melancholy and thoughtful man. At what age did Milton write his ode on the morning of Christ's nativity? Option B, 21 years old. Milton wrote ode on the morning of Christ's nativity in 1629 at the age of 21. It celebrates the birth of Christ and the defeat of pagan deities. यह कविता ईसा मसीह के जन्म और मूर्ति पूजा के अंत का जश्न मनाती है. The theme of Paradise Lost is option A, to justify the ways of God to men. Paradise Lost begins with the famous invocation where Milton states his purpose to justify the ways of God to men. It explores themes of free will, obedience, and the fall of man. पैराडाइज लॉस्ट की शुरुआत मिल्टन के प्रसिद्ध उद्घोष से होती है, ईश्वर के मार्गों को मानव के समक्ष उचित ठहराना। इसमें स्वतंत्र इच्छा, आज्ञाकारिता और मानव के पतन की थीम को दर्शाया गया है। The theme of Paradise Regained is option A, Satan's temptation of Christ in wilderness. Paradise Regained 1671 is a sequel to Paradise Lost. It focuses on Christ's temptation by Satan in the wilderness as described in the Gospel of Luke and Matthew. Unlike Paradise Lost, it emphasized moral victory over Satan rather than war. Parad Next, who described Milton is in the words God gifted organ wise of England and the mighty mouthed inventor of harmonies. Option Tennyson. Tennyson calls Milton the God-gifted organ voice of England. It is the poem Milton that Tennyson makes this comment. Next, Milton Paradise Lost is called its grand style. Leviathan is compared to option D. Leviathan. In Paradise Lost, Leviathan is a sea monster from the Bible. Milton uses it as a symbol of immense power, comparing it to Saturn, size, and hell. In hell, Milton wrote his pastoral elegy Lycidas on the death of Edward King, his friend. Lycidas 1637 is a pastoral elegy written in memory of Edward King, Milton, Cambridge University friends who drowned in its Irish Sea. It includes literary criticism, religious themes, and poetic reflection on fate. Samson Agonists is a tragedy based on option A, Sophocles model. Samson Agonist is a closet drama written in the style of Greek tragedy, particularly inspired by Sophocles' Oedipus Rex and Antigone. It follows the Aristotelian unities, time, place, and action, and it modeled after classical Greek drama. These following lines are taken from Nothing is here for tears, nothing to wail or knock the breast, no weakness, no contempt, dispraise or blame, nothing but will and fear. Option A, Samson Agonists. These lines are from Samson Agonist, where Samson expresses stoic endurance in the face of suffering. The poem emphasizes strength, divine will, and heroic endurance. यह पंक्ति समसन ऑगोनिस्ट से ली गई है, जहां सैमसन अपने दुख को सहन करने की शक्ति को दर्शाता है। यह संयम, ईश्वरीय इच्छा और वीरता को महत्व देता है। For books are not absolutely dead things, but do contain a potency of life in them, to be as active as the soul was whose progeny they are. The above lines are taken from option A, Areopagitica. Areopagitica is Milton's famous prose work defending the freedom of speech and press. This passage suggests that books have a living power, reflecting the intellect of and soul of their creators. एरियोपेजिटिका मिल्टन का प्रसिद्ध गद्य निबंध है जो अभिव्यक्ति और प्रेस की स्वतंत्रता का समर्थन करता है। इसमें बताया गया है कि पुस्तकें मृत वस्तु नहीं होती, बल्कि उसमें लेखक की आत्मा का प्रतिबिंबित होती है। Who said Lycidas is the touchstone of poetic taste? Option A, Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold is a Victorian critic. Praised Lycidas as a standard or true poetic taste. He considered it is a perfect example of poetic elegance and depth. मैथ्यू अर्नोल्ड जो विक्टोरियन आलोचक थे, उन्होंने लिसिडस को काव्यात्मक सौंदर्य का आदर्श बताया। उन्होंने कहा इसे काव्य की उत्कृष्टता का प्रतिमान माना। Dear son of memory, great heir of fame, what needs thou such weak witness of thy name, and so sculptured in such pomp dost lie, that kings for such a tomb would wish to die. The above lines are taken from option B, Lycidas. These lines are from Lycidas Milton's pastoral elegy written in Edward King. The passage suggests that true fame and memory are greater than material monuments. यह पंक्तियां लिसिडस से ली गई हैं, जो मिल्टन पेस्टोरल एलिजी है। इसमें कहा गया है कि सच्ची प्रसिद्धि और स्मृति भौतिक स्मारकों और से अधिक मूल्यवान होती है। In Paradise Lost, who is next to Saturn? Beelzebub. Beelzebub is Saturn's chief lieutenant, Lieutenant, and second in command. He plays a key role in supporting Saturn's rebellion and plans to corrupt mankind. Who said Milton was passionate man who lived in passionate time? Option A, Campton Rickett. रिकेट ने मिल्टन को एक भावनात्मक व्यक्ति बताया जो एक भावनात्मक युग में रहता था। मिल्टन ने के प्यूरिटन विचार और राजनीतिक सक्रियता इस भावना को दर्शाते हैं। ऑप्शन सैमुअल जॉनसन, नॉट रिकेट, सैमुअल जॉनसन in Life of Milton. The phrase Milton was a passionate man who lived in passionate times. It's most commonly attributed to Samuel Johnson in his Life of Milton. where he described Milton's active involvement in the tumultuous political climate of his era, highlighting his strong conviction and fervent writing style. By calling Milton passionate, Johnson emphasized the intensity with which he engaged in political debates and expressed his beliefs through writing. Passionate times, these refers in the turbulent period in English history during Milton's life, including the execution of King Charles I and the subsequent Commonwealth period. In Paradise Lost, who possesses the qualities of Milton? Option A, Saturn. Many critics argue that Saturn reflects Milton's own rebellious spirit, intelligence, and determination. Like Milton, Saturn is portrayed as the powerful speaker and leader. Life of Milton has been written by option A, Samuel Johnson. Samuel Johnson wrote Life of Milton as part of his books Life of the Poets. Johnson was critical of Milton's political views but praised his poetry. Commerce was presented in honor of the option A, Earl of Bridgewater. Commerce was a masque written for the Earl of Bridgewater children. It was performed in 1634 at Ludlow Castle. Samson Agonist is a option A, closet drama. Samson Agonist is a classical tragedy based on the biblical story of Samson from the book of Judges. It followed Greek dramatic principles and focuses on themes and blindness, strength, and divine will. Manoah and Dalila are characters in option A, Samson Agonist. Manoah is Samson's father and Dalila is Samson's wife. Dalila or Delilah, who betrayed him to the Palestine. Manoah, Samson's father, a loving but helpless old man. Truth is an impossible to be soiled by any outward touch as the sunbeam. The above line are taken from option A, Areopagitica, option C, the doctrine and discipline of the divorce. Truth, John Milton's truth is as impossible to be soiled by any outward touch as the sunbeam in 1643. Option A, John Milton. Only virtuous people truly appreciate freedom, while those who are not good often mistake freedom for ability to do whatever they want without consequences, which calls license. Option C, to the Lord General Cromwell. Peace hath her victories no less renowned that war are taken from a letter written by John Milton to Oliver Cromwell. essentially stating the achieving peace can be just as celebrated as winning a war. It is a powerful metaphor highlighting the value of peaceful accomplishments. Option D. Commerce. Next, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. The above line are taken from option B. Paradise Lost. These are Saturn's famous words in Paradise Lost, book first. He expresses the defiant and rebellious nature choosing power in hell over submission in heaven. यह सैटर्न की प्रसिद्ध पंक्ति है जो पैराडाइज लॉस्ट बुक फर्स्ट में आती है। यह स्वर्ग में दास बनने के बजाय नर्क में शासन करना पसंद करता है, जिससे उसका विद्रोही स्वभाव प्रकट होता है। All is not lost. The unconquerable will and study of revenge, immortal hate, and the courage never to submit or yield. The above lines are taken from option A, B, Paradise Lost. These lines are spoken by Satan in Paradise Lost, book first. He expresses his unyielding determination and eternal hatred against God, highlighting the indomitable spirit. यह पंक्ति पैराडाइज लॉस्ट बुक फर्स्ट के सैटन द्वारा ली गई है, कही गई है। यह वह अपनी अटूट इच्छा शक्ति अनकनकरेबल विल, प्रतिशोध की भावना और परमात्मा के खिलाफ अपनी अमर घृणा को व्यक्त करता है। सेकेंड लास्ट क्वेश्चन। फॉर लिबर्टी हैथ अ शार्प एंड डबल एज, fit only to be handled by just and virtuous men, that God may enjoy the freedom which they merit, and the bad of crop which they need. Who said this? Option A. John Milton. यह उद्धरण मिल्टन के गद्य कार्यों से लिया गया है, जिसमें वह स्वतंत्रता के द्वैत स्वरूप पर चर्चा करते हैं। वे कहते हैं कि स्वतंत्रता केवल तभी लाभकारी होती है जब यह नेक लोगों द्वारा उपयोग की जाती हो, अन्यथा यह अराजकता में बदल जाती है। एंड लास्ट, fame in the spur that the clear spirit doth raise to scorn delight and leap laborious days. Fame is no plant that grows on mortal soil. The above lines are taken from option A. Lycidas. These lines are from Lycidas Milton pastoral elegy written in memory of Edward King. Milton described fame is an immortal virtue, not something that grows from earthly ambition. I hope you like this video. That concludes John Milton 500 Essential Questions Part 4. We explored his literary brilliance, political vision, and lasting impact. Keep questioning, keep learning. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dive into the literary masters. See you in the next part. Thank you.